Hello, everyone. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 21 of my LinkedIn Live series. I'm joined today by a longtime connection of mine, Wesley Kennedy-Sita. He's a MedTech headhunter, startup consultant, also a global director at the company he works at. How are you doing today, Wesley?
Doing fantastic. Thank you very much for having me, Stephen.
Yeah, glad to finally have you on. And for people who don't know, we connected 6 years ago. I'm looking back at our LinkedIn chat history. Back in 2016, Wesley reached out to me, trying to recruit me to go to Verb Surgical. Couldn't get the right role, and then we just kept in touch. Since then, I'm creating content. The company that Wesley works for, they're really big at creating content, and we've just been staying in touch. And you're finally here on my LinkedIn Live show.
Very glad to be here. And again, I'm very impressed with what you're able to put together, what you've done on LinkedIn and what you've done just creating a brand and social media. It's not just for yourself, but you're helping a lot of people. You're helping a lot of folks that are looking for that guidance that may not know where to turn. So kudos to you, and I appreciate for bringing me on.
Yeah, no, really appreciate you joining as well, and thank you for all the kind words. But I can't do these LinkedIn live shows without guests like you, right? And my other guests, you guys are the experts, right? So you help bring up the topics that we'll talk about here today, and we'll help continue these LinkedIn live series. So Wesley, do you want to introduce yourself? What do you do?
Absolutely. I work for the Mullings Group. If anybody watching this and has ever gotten one of our messages, we are a MedTech centric search firm. We're generalists. We essentially serve all over the globe. We build everything from early stage, first person startups to Fortune 500 organizations. Been with the company since 2015. The day I joined, our first client, or one of the largest clients we've served to date, was Verb Surgical, the Google Verily and Johnson & Johnson surgical robotics startup. Still works under the Johnson & Johnson brand, but for the last 7 years, I would say the majority of my efforts have been in complex medtech R&D recruitment.
Mm-hmm. And do you mostly recruit engineers or different type of job functions as well?
It's a broad term now. It's graduated into more executive leadership, everything from operations to marketing strategy. In reality, as you kind of see, titles are starting to disintegrate. It's really, you're looking at functions. A lot of the work is still in R&D. A lot of the interest will still remain in R&D. But I mean, everything from the individual that you would hire to secure funding in a 3-person startup, regulatory consultants, essentially, healthcare economics, really a lot of individuals that they're bringing in, almost more like Deloitte or Big Four types that consult. How exactly do we take this technology to market? What is exactly the strategy to launch this technology? How do we get it reimbursed? And essentially, where should we be positioning? I can go into much further detail, but yeah, piece by piece.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll be talking a little bit about what MedTech is, all the exciting opportunities and exciting things are going on. So if you're watching here, MedTech sounds super interesting to you, make sure you connect to Wesley after this and ask him what kind of opportunities are there. So Wesley, let's start with our first topic here. What is exactly MedTech?
It's essentially medical technology for any facets of technical innovation, any facets for digital exploration, how it can be used in medicine, in healthcare, in the OR. The first client that I reached out to you towards, my first entry, was a 4-arm collaborative robotic remote platform for surgery. The most notable would be Intuitive Surgical's Da Vinci. Probably the last 6 years have been chasing the integration into robotics and digital applications into medicine, using AI for patient monitoring, using deep learning to potentially spot cancerous tissue, and to advance medical imaging. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And essentially the arena or the market is expanding faster than known. But I mean, for med tech, it's really the infusion of advanced technology to general healthcare.
Yeah, and I remember in our conversation 6 years ago, right? Trying to recruit me to Verb Surgical, and I was doing the research on the company. I was like, oh man, this is so cool, right? Because I have an engineering background. I was like, wow, robots like doing surgery, like you don't need to have a person actually holding the tools. The robot does it, and it's more accurate, can make very small, precise cuts and things like that. And then now, 6 years later, we're talking about, like you said, AI, machine learning, big data, like all these new technology trends are making it into the medical industry. And I mean, at the end of the day, this is just saving lives. It just makes surgery, makes operations, makes analysis, all these things so much easier.
Absolutely. A lot of the early concepts of surgical robotics came from defense.
Mm.
Yeah. I think what else will we look at? I'd say probably in the last 7 years, what we're really seeing is somewhat of a shift from what was in 2015, 2016 and onward is every medical device company wanted to have a robot. Everyone had to have every conference you went to, it was almost like going to Best Buy. Like you see all the cool tech, you see these trade shows, that's where the sell was. You would see XYZ Medical would have some giant KUKA or Epson collaborative robotic arm, performing, halfway semi-autonomous or autonomous tissue suturing on some type of patient dummy. Now what you're seeing over the last probably 2 to 3 years, they're shifting away from the actual robotic system, the hardware, and they're really looking at software applications.
Mm.
That's where I think the financial interest or the economics that's where the puck's going in terms of medtech.
Mm-hmm.
What type of software you could offer, what type of AI you can offer. It still remains to be seen. In 2021 alone, there was in the U.S. $30 billion in medtech investment.
Wow. That is crazy. And that's a perfect transition to what, our next topic here. What are the latest trends? You talked, bigger shift into software. What else have you seen in the last year or so, or what do you see in the future upcoming for MedTech?
I see a lot of software and a lot of AI to digitize the EMR, the electronic medical records, the electronic health records, even things like DICAM, like just being able to, there are companies now that there is like the term SAMD, software as a medical device. You would build a sophisticated software program with AI or machine learning applications that essentially is plug and play, like a USB plugin to any type of hospital's electrical medical system or database that essentially optimizes the way, almost similar to way like business intelligence software, like something where nurses, physicians, clinicians, they can utilize John Smith's data from 20 years back. They press one button with some type of medical device software product, and they have the most sophisticated and comprehensive records, easy to use, easy to pull at a fingertip. What I just described is extremely complex. I couldn't code it if you put a gun to my head, but what they're offering in terms really does save time. And that's where when you bring in the strategics or you bring in the analysts, they can show hospital systems, they can show significant return on value, little investment, and again, year over year return in value. Simply from plug and play of a USB port.
That is crazy, right? And I mean, hopefully, we're past those days where you have a doctor's note and you can't even it's not even legible, right? Now it's all electronics, it's all digitized. And I mean, in your example, you said you're pulling records from 20 years back, right? That's a lot of data. You can look at trends. I'm just looking at basic things, right? Looking at like their blood tests, their cholesterol level, blood pressure, sugar levels, things like that. But you can see that trend and you can quickly, you probably maybe a possibility is, you don't even need to have the patient go to the doctor. You can prescribe them, medication or prescriptions just by looking at the data that you have on hand, right? And it saves you on that doctor's visits. Doctors can spend more time on more serious things.
That's the ultimate goal. That's where you reduce hospital congestion. That's where you improve patient outcomes. And that's once you have more clinical data, once you have more released publications that show this is where your technology flourishes. This is where your product gets adopted in the market. And this is where you see the success. I mean, this is really just scratching the surface. This little area, this is one tiny area of where software is being applied into medical technology. When you're actually looking inside the OR, you create these digital ecosystems to where, the patient comes in and that software program, everything about that patient is listed into every surgeon device, into every handheld surgical instrument, every robotic program, every vision system. A lot of what they're doing with AR, VR is fascinating. The initial ideas of where a surgeon would have AR, VR goggles, mixed reality goggles, and they'd be able to, perform kind of optimized digital surgery. Now it's becoming a communication platform, something where in an OR, you'd have a 70-inch screen, 70-inch flat screen. You could potentially have a collaboration platform. Companies. Yours or mine? I'm guessing that's yours. apologize about that. I'm on a shared computer.
Yeah, no problem.
For what?
Your camera looks like it's zoomed in. I don't know what happened there.
1 second. Anywho, here, I'll adjust. But anywho, as I was saying before, for what, for what this connected OR can really mean for healthcare and how it can improve pretty much the everyday facet of MedTech. This software, this patient comes in, there's so much of this patient's data that's available on every single device inside that OR for a procedure, complex or not, that's essentially improve their likelihood of a successful outcome.
Mm-hmm.
If it's laparoscopic procedures, cardiothoracic, ENT, I mean, the more data that you have, the more you understand. The AR/VR component that they were discussing, it's becoming more of a teaching, kind of a teaching apparatus, and is more of a collaborative environment. Something where multiple physicians can lobby in, and they're basically all viewing through the same. Like, it's not just what you're looking through these AR/VR glasses with 3D data overlays. Everyone else is seeing the same thing. So people can chime in. A physician or an expert somewhere in Switzerland can chime in and say, no, you need to make that incision, or no, you need to identify that type of tissue. It could go on and on. We can talk for hours about the advancement. I mean, it's fairly incredible about how fast the trends in technology and how fast the innovation are changing.
That is amazing, right? And I'm being educated here, right? This is just really, really cool to hear about. What are some innovative ideas that you see companies working on? If you can share, what are some cool things people are working on?
The AR/VR looked fascinating. What they were looking at, some of the concepts where, I mean, you were completely submersive into it. I think that they're going to shift away from that. They're really looking at a mixed reality where you have a digital overlay in front of you, but you're still connected into the room. Like, you still have peripheral vision around you. If you know about AR/VR, there's some. I mean, if you look at God, I should know the name of this, but the Facebook, the Oculus. You put this on, that's it. You are completely entrenched into that room, into that experience. Having something more that's mixed reality, that really you understand, okay, you have a nurse to the right of you, you have physicians or assistants or students left of you, you can actually still maneuver inside the OR. Another interesting concept that's come about is they're looking to digitize some of the standard practices in medicine, like tissue perfusion. Like, would typically normally you have some type of vision system, you inject ICD dyes. I know my terminology is going to be half there, but you inject some type of dye to have a color marker that would understand, okay, is this disease tissue? Is this potential cancerous tissue? Now you can digitize that. I mean, there's companies in Boston that are building this technology that essentially, like you picture like a GoPro, like a small miniaturized camera that's plugged into any operative's vision system. You have a vision camera that's inside the patient, wherever. As you're examining inside the patient, you have digital tissue perfusion that understands with full graphic clarity, okay, that tissue has blood loss, that tissue is cancerous, that tissue is diseased, that's where we need to cut. I mean, it's making it so a 5-year-old could potentially do surgery.
That is crazy. That is very, very cool. So, well, maybe time for a new industry for me. There's a lot of cool stuff going on.
We're always looking for defense engineers. They know mills stand, they know requirements. Mm-hmm. The medical device companies, when they're startups, it's just trying to build a concept. Once you actually become a company, once you commercialize, you need a sophisticated product development practice. One of the major components of that is systems engineering. You need to have detailed systems requirements analysis, a more refined process. The largest stockpile of electromechanical complex systems engineers is defense. It's Lockheed, it's Northrop, it's Bell Helicopter. I could go on and on.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was at Lockheed, it seemed like everyone was a systems engineer. There was barely any, there was, mechanical and software, but I mean, pretty much most of the engineers were grouped into systems engineering. And that just shows how important that is in defense and likewise in the medical field, right? Because I mean, what you're working on affects lives, right? That's why your requirements have to be so, you have to make sure you meet the requirements, make sure your requirements cover everything you need to. And I mean, this is the importance of, how important your product is.
You have a regulated environment. The same way if the government or the defense agencies come into Lockheed, they want to inspect all of your design history file. FDA comes into a medical device company, they want to know every single design change they want to know the entire history of that product from soup to nuts.
Yeah, exactly. So Wesley, you're talking about how the Mullings Group, you hire people for startups to even larger companies. So talking about building startups, what are some ways that companies can start when you start with startups? They start with a concept, start with the idea. How can they build that startup into a much fuller company?
A lot of what we saw in 2021 was a mad dash to fund as much med tech startups. It was the hottest thing in the world. With startups, it's going to come from a multitude of different areas. A lot of startups we've seen in the last year are physicians, they're doctors. They have the closest proximity to identifying a problem or a gap, something to where they can build a product or a solution to fill a gap and create a company. A lot of what they see with this, what they'll need is they'll understand the clinical acumen, they'll understand the clinical need. What they're looking for is an engineer to build that product or write that software. They're looking for a financier or someone to bridge that relationship to either private equity or venture capital. You don't want to pay for it yourself. They want to look for somebody that can understand potentially a commercial market strategy. If we're going to sell, what exactly is our product first? That's a kind of a big component. The second, who are we selling our product to? Are we selling it to the market? Are we selling it to the consumer? Are we selling it to hospitals? Or are we going to make this product specifically to sell to a larger great white shark medical device company?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For the startups, you need to understand, or I would recommend for any startup, develop some type of stage gate process, understand project management, to create some type of solidified infrastructure to understand, okay, where are we right now? Where do we want to be in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? What are the realistic resources that we have available to us? What do we need to be successful? And I mean, if you're running a startup, no matter what your role in the company, you're wearing 15 different hats. And get very comfortable with not knowing the answer and having to go find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you there. With the doctors and physicians, a lot of them starting new companies because they know what the pain points are. They live it every single day. They see what the issues are. And I mean, you need a whole team, right? You have the mastermind, the CEO, the founder, whoever behind the idea. But you need like you said, the engineers. You need financiers. You need funding to do all that, right? You need people who are on the business side, who understand marketing, who understand customer needs and clients and things like that. So it definitely takes time to grow it up. But I think the key is you have that pain point, and you're willing to do whatever it takes to solve that pain point.
The successful leaders that actually build startups, there's usually 5 tiers to their background. Ex-Navy SEAL, ex-astronaut, ex-doctor, ex-lawyer, because basically they know they can do everything. They can. If you're a physician, depending on the license, you can write some of the own regulatory material. If you're an engineering background, you can stand in and be the lead engineer of your own startup. If you're a lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. So where you can actually take things on, where you can wear more hats with more expertise. That's why typically if you see most CEOs, they have these type of insane, you've done everything in life backgrounds. World traveler, astronaut, I built my own car.
Yeah. I just want to highlight a couple comments here related on our previous topic. So Jonathan came from Lockheed, switched to medical devices, like you said, fairly similar, right, in terms of the regulations, the requirements, just because how important what you're working on is. It directly impacts the lives of the military, of patients, even more than that. And then Shannon, good afternoon to you, Shannon. Thank you for joining as well. Now let's go to our last topic. This is directly what you do, Wesley. Hiring strategies. What are some good things, good hiring strategies? What are some bad things that you see that aren't so effective?
Kind of organization. If you're going to hire anyone, regardless of the position, regardless of the function, you need an actual detailed plan, detailed process. Every client that we speak with, the first conversation is, what is the process? Who are the individuals or the teammates that they're going to be interviewing with? What is the purpose of those discussions? Too many companies, they just rush it, or they just have let's just have a discussion. Yes, that's fantastic. But the reality is they're investing time the same way. They're spending time to learn about this company. You're spending time that you could be developing your technology to interview this person. Make sure that you are utilizing that time and show the respect that the actual interview deserves. If this is an electrical engineer, what specific electrical engineering functions are you looking for that most likely are the position descriptions that most folks sent out? I'll raise my hand first to say most of them are just copy paste. Even if they're technical, it'll just say prefer to have 2 years of C++ design and development. They're never going to be granular. Even the granular ones, they won't make them granular because they fear that most people will self-select out before even trying to interview. Having an actual solidified practice of what you're going to speak to these individuals about, how it relates to the function of the position, where the growth, what they're looking for in terms of growth of the company, what position growth can look like. You have these, once you have these as a set practice, you can have a much more streamlined process. Most of the companies that I'm working with now, startup or even mid-level, 3 interviews, reference checks, offer, background check, drug test, good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no need to have those 7-10 rounds of interviews, because at that point, I mean, it takes a super long time. It's a waste of time on the interviewers and the interviewee. And at the end of the day, it's like you have this so drawn out process. You have this, potential candidate you're really interested in, but you have 10 different interviews. They're going to go with someone that has 3 interviews. They gave them an offer already. Why would they have to keep going through your interview process, right? And the thing about the job description, yeah, and the thing about the job description, if it's not clear, it's going to be vague. You're going to end up with a candidate that you didn't expect, or they didn't expect what they were going to be working on. You're going to have some friction there, and 6 months, the person's going to leave because they ended up in a job that they're not, that we're expected to be in.
It's not easy. I mean, I can sit here in my chair as a recruiter that this is all I focus on every single day. Actually having to hire, if you're an electrical engineering manager, your job is to build the electronics for that product. Actually, the hiring part, that's a whole different animal. And I mean, I get it. For every company that's had to go through this process, it is arduous. I mean, to be able to unplug from whatever problem you're going to solve and go talk to this random person, you may only had 20 seconds to even review. That can be a challenge. Luckily, with the service that we offer is that anybody that we're working with, any client that we're working with, they have a complete dossier on an individual. They will know the key bullet points that they're looking for. We streamline everything to where, yes, this is what I'm looking for, interview. The interview could take 5-10 minutes and they're just good to go. But we half the time that we're coaching the candidates, we're coaching the hiring managers. You have to sell. This is the most competitive. God help me, it's tech. If it's AI, if it's electrical, if it's software, you have to sell on why this individual should look at you versus elsewhere. For MedTech, we're not the highest paid. We're not the FANG companies. We're not the consumer tech. So we need to show individuals, those engineers, why they should look at MedTech, what the actual technology they're developing, and how it's going to save people's lives. Seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you there, right? It's you got to sell people on the company, on the people you're working with, and the industry, right? And I think you did a great job today selling what the MedTech industry is all about. Before we wrap up here, Wesley, you talked a lot about the different trends going on in MedTech, a lot of AI, a lot of software. A few years ago, it used to be all robots. Now it's all software, digitizing medical records, doing a bunch of examinations and surgeries with a collaborative team through AR and VR. Just a lot of cool things going on. You talk about building startups, the challenges, how you should build up a startup, having that good project management gate process, and then finally hiring strategies, right? You want to make sure you make it as easy as possible for the interviewer and the interviewee. Just want to give you the last couple minutes here. Thank you so much for sharing all this. Make sure to connect with Wesley here. I dropped his LinkedIn profile. But Wesley, I want to give you the last couple minutes here to make your plug. How do you help others? What do you need help with? Or what else do you have going on?
For right now, it's the last few minutes. Every time you go on LinkedIn, you're going to see who's going through layoffs. I know Calm got hit today. I know Peloton, they keep getting hit. The biggest one, Rivian, I mean, they're going on and on. We do work across the country. We do work across the globe. But if you're with Rivian right now and you don't know if you're going to have a job tomorrow, if you know it's still coming about, connect with me. If I can't help you, I can find you someone that can. We do a ton of work in the Southern Cal area. If you're in a company and you don't know what the next week is going to look like, connect with me, connect with the recruiter, just start putting those lines out there. Obviously, this sounds like, 1 + 1 = 2, but the reality is set yourself up. Do not no matter what your situation is, start to look outwards, start to set up those connection lines. You do not want to be the last person on that boat when it goes down.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to really vouch for Wesley. As I said in the beginning, we've been connected for 6 years. Didn't end up getting a position that he was recruiting me for, but just throughout this whole process, through phone calls, through emails, through LinkedIn messaging, Wesley's just been an absolute professional at this, right? Very, very professional in his communicating, right? Doesn't, try to call me every single day, try to push me for anything, but very professional throughout. And I mean, this is why, we've been connected all these years, and he's on my LinkedIn live show. I refer candidates to him when he says, "Hey, do you know anyone looking for these type of positions?" So again, if you're in a tough spot, you're like what Wesley said, if you don't know what work is going to look like next week, reach out to him, right? If he can't help you, he will find someone that can help you. So he's a genuine, helpful guy. So make sure you connect with them.
Really appreciate the kind words. Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. And then got a question here from Samuel. Basically curious if as a startup trying to figure out what your customers' needs are. How do you determine what the most important user needs are, right? Or like, how do you determine what's real, what's what's more fluff? Did you have any insights on this, Wesley?
You have to understand the voice of customer. You have to bring in the right analysis or you have to define what your product is and what market you're looking to serve. Once you have that, you need to go to either the KOLs or you need to bring in the right type of analyst that can decide the VOC. Once you have that, if you want to bring in human factors experts, you need to understand what exactly they are looking for versus what every other competitor might be doing. There could be 4 or 5 different competitors that all have it wrong.
Yeah. Always talk to your customer, right? Always understand their needs. Great point there. So, again, thank you so much, Wesley, for joining my LinkedIn live show. This is 6 years in the making from our initial conversation. Any final words you want to leave our audience with when we wrap up here?
No, I implore everybody who might be watching this, get on with Steven. I mean, it's a great platform. It's somebody that, I mean, you just take it and you run with it. I know it's going to always have the jitters getting onto one of these LinkedIn Live or virtual live sessions. Once you get it started, once you get the ball rolling, you get into a habit and you'll see the success. If you're in a commercial position, it's literally this is now essentially the flagship platform for really any type of commercial activity. But Steven, you've done a fantastic job building this. I'm very happy to be here, and I hope this is the first of many.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I mean, since we've been connected so long, you see me start from day one, right? Start with the 52-week challenge of videos. The first, 20 or so were pretty bad, but now I'm doing almost a weekly LinkedIn live show. But again, thank you for your support over the last 6 years. Just building this great relationship. Thank you everyone for watching, all the comments as well. And again, thank you so much again, Wesley, for being an amazing guest here and sharing everything you know about MedTech.
Fantastic. Very glad.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Talk to you all next week.
Thank you.